Cooked food is addictive on chemical level because all carbohydrates, when they cooked, turn chemically into sucrose, into white sugar. And white sugar is very addictive substance. Everybody knows that. You can read the book Sugar Blues, and you will see their proof beyond any doubts that white sugar is addictive. So when we eat cooked carbohydrates, it looks like it's brown rice. It looks like it's baked squash, organic squash. It has different texture, but if you will really look in a huge microscope, electronic microscope, you will see that the structure of that chemical structure is sucrose, white sugar. Okay, that is why all international cuisines are based on the cooked carbohydrates. Okay, so that's just one level, chemical level of addiction to cooked food. The next one is the biological level, the chemical, biological, mental, and spiritual. So the second one is biological. We were all already been raw fooders in our lifetime when we were just born, because our mother was feeding us raw breast milk. She did not steam it. She did not pasteurize it. In fact, if you would drink pasteurized, you wouldn't be as healthy. So you already were on raw food in your life. And some people testified yesterday that they've been on just breast milk for a year or two. So you already been raw fooders for a year and two in your life, straight, 100% raw fooders with no problem. And then your pediatrician told your mother that you need to begin to feed your baby cooked food. And your mother bought some colorful bottle with 18 months of life shelf and put you on a special chair and put you in your bib, and your father was there with the camera, remember? And then she said, open your mouth, baby. And you opened your mouth. But as soon as the cooked food touched your tongue, your body said no. The body recognized the harmful taste of cooked food in there, and the body said, oh no, it will take you a long time to get rid of that havoc. You'll never be the same. Don't do that. And so the baby did this, right? And then mother said, okay, father, hold the baby. And then they forced it into you. And then you spit it out. And they did it again. You did it again. That's what babies do when they fed cooked food, first time in their life. But then mother was persistent, and you were hooked on cooked food. And since then, it became part of your life. You cannot imagine living without it, and it's really very hard to make that step. So that's biological level of addiction to cooked food. And I want to remind you that the good news is that if you only stay for 2 months raw, 100%, your body is capable of flipping back. And your body will actually produce only juices that are needed for raw food diet, which is much less. According to Dr. Zalmanov, who published the book Sacred Wisdom of Human Body, when we eat 3 cooked meals a day, our body produces 2 gallons of digestive juices per day. When we eat raw food, it's somewhere roughly around 2 cups. 2 gallons, 2 cups, huge difference. To produce 2 gallons, it takes about 70 to 80% of our entire energy. So whenever you stay 2 months on raw food, your body flips back to become a raw food body, and then you produce less digestive juices. How many of you have noticed that? That you produce less juices, that you don't salivate, that you don't have no growling anymore. How many of you? Raise your hand. Look around. See, there's several people. I'm not lying. I'm not making it up. It's true. Okay, and then the next level is mental level of addiction to cooked food. Because we live in a stressful world. We have lots of stress every day. And we were not educated how to handle the stress. Nobody ever told you when you were a child, maybe some exceptions, but nobody told you, hey, whenever you have stress, go for a walk. And just go for a walk. Most people said, well, you cried, baby, here is a lollipop for you. Oh, you feel bitter, let me buy you some ice cream. That's what we were told, that food is comforting. And so majority of our food stopped being nutritious. It's not important anymore. It's very important that it is comforting. So we now eat for comfort, not for nutrition. And it's way more important because our life is so stressful. And if you go in the supermarket and see how much nutritious food and how much comforting, most of it is comforting. I would say 90% is comforting and only 10% is nutritious. And of course chocolate is not nutritious. Not at all. It's very comforting. And cake is not nutritious. It's comforting. And popcorn is not nutritious. It's comforting. And so lots of food is comforting. Very comforting. The more comforting, the less nutritious. And so the best way to handle the stress is to go for a walk. And then the second thing you could do, you could just drink some water. Because whenever we go for a walk, our muscles produce some positive hormones, including some endorphins. And then we feel better. These endorphins counteract the negative emotion, negative hormones that when we have negative emotions, stress. So then we begin to feel better. And everybody knows that. You all experience that. When you're walking, you always feel better. Even if you don't like to walk, even if you're physically not fit, after walk you always feel better, feel emotionally better. And finally, okay, chemical, biological, mental, and then spiritual addiction to cooked food. Because we are all spiritual beings. You are all spiritual beings. Every single one of you is not just a robot who is mechanically moving. You have this something in you that is the most important thing, spiritual being. And as a spiritual being, we have spiritual tasks. But we also live in material world. And when we live in material and in spiritual at the same time, material world is very demanding. We have created very demanding material world. Is there anybody who doesn't have to make a living here? Is there anybody who doesn't make any payments? Is there anybody who doesn't pay car insurance? Is there anybody who doesn't have to do certain things every single day, whether you want it or not? So, because we have to, we push the spiritual thing aside. Well, it could wait. It could wait. I have to pay my debts. That could wait. Well, it's waiting there already for 30 or 40 years. And because of that, we have developed spiritual pain. That's the way of spiritual self letting know that it's waiting. It's still waiting. We develop spiritual pain. That spiritual pain is not like physical pain, but it's much worse. It makes people commit suicide. It makes people feel depressed and take antidepressants. And that makes us feel so unhappy and so bored and so empty and feel such a grief. Because it's very, very important. And so that grief is so unbearable that we would like to have a break. We're searching for some pleasures. When we follow our spiritual mission, we don't look for pleasures because our life is just plain happiness. But when we don't, when our life is really shallow, then we're looking for pleasures. Are we looking for pleasures? What are pleasures? And what is the difference between pleasure and happiness? When you buy on yourself a new dress, is it a pleasure or happiness? Some people think it's happiness, but it's actually pleasure. And when you buy yourself a new expensive car, is it a pleasure or happiness? When in Russia, they all believe it's happiness. What do you think? What is it? It's just a pleasure. When you eat in good food, delicious food, what is that? Happiness? Pleasure. So what is happiness? Happiness is when you are fulfilling your spiritual self, when you connect it to your inner being. That's happiness, and that's the feeling. It doesn't go anywhere away. Actually, happiness fills you with energy, and it gives you, and it doesn't take any hormones from your body. It doesn't waste anything. When pleasures, whenever you experience pleasure, it's wasting your hormones. It's draining your system. In order to eat, you need to drain some hormones. In order to experience high, you need to drain some hormones. And people who use pleasures all the time, like, some people have so much money, they could buy any pleasures. They become very depressed because they drain their positive hormones. They lack hormones. So pleasures are really harmful. No wonder old masters were staying away from pleasures. They were trying to live the life with little pleasures so they will be closer to happiness. That's two things. Some people think that they could substitute happiness with more pleasures. They think the more pleasures they have, the closer they to happiness, but actually they're further and further away. So the most accessible, the most available, the most inexpensive pleasure is cooked food. And it does knock you down for a few minutes. For 49 cents you buy a bag of chips at any convenience store. And you eat them and your brain becomes foggy for a couple minutes and you're having a break from your spiritual pain. And we want it to last. So we go again and again and again. We eat enough so it lasts for several hours. And that's the hardest level of addiction to cooked food, the spiritual level.